This is its financial history too, where money's past reveals tomorrow's truth. In 1832, a family of refugees arrived in India with nothing, but within decades, they were richer than kings, and behind their fortune was a drug empire that destroyed millions of lives. This is the dark story the British Empire never wanted you to know. Welcome to its financial history too. In 1832, a small Jewish family fled persecution in Baghdad. They had lost their wealth, their safety, and their home. And yet, of all the places in the world they could escape to, they chose a distant land, India. No one knew then that these refugees would soon gain a nickname whispered across Asia. The Rothschilds of the East. Their schools, hospitals, libraries, and docks reshaped an entire city. But behind this image of generosity was a secret empire built on a trade that destroyed millions of lives. And the strongest ally of this empire was the British Crown itself. Today, we dive into the rise and fall of the Sassoon family, the dynasty that built modern Mumbai while fueling one of history's darkest trades. Mumbai before Mumbai. Modern Mumbai is worth hundreds of billions of dollars and stands as India's financial powerhouse. But if you peel back the layers of this city, you keep running into one name, the Sassoons. When they arrived in what was then Bombay, it was a growing British colonial port. The Sassoons had lost much in Baghdad, but they carried something more powerful than money: global merchant networks, business experience, and a sharp instinct for opportunity. They immediately recognized Bombay's future. Cotton mills, ports, warehouses, they invested in everything the city needed to grow. The neighborhoods that once housed their mills are now filled with luxury towers and billion-dollar developments. And yes, their philanthropy became legendary. Schools, synagogues, libraries, hospitals, many still stand today, but behind the charity stood opium. The dark secret behind their wealth: the Sassoons didn't become one of the richest families in the East through cotton or real estate. Their real wealth came from smuggling opium into China. By the mid-1800s, opium was the single most profitable commodity in Asia. The British Empire cultivated it in India and pushed it into Chinese markets to fix its massive trade deficit. And the Sassoons? They came to dominate the trade, controlling up to 70% of the world's opium supply. It was so profitable that Britain rewarded them with knighthoods, privileges, and access to elite society that very few colonial subjects could ever dream of. A brown Jewish family becoming part of the British aristocracy. That's how powerful they were. From Baghdad hostages to British power brokers, David Sassoon, the family patriarch, had once been the son of Baghdad's chief treasurer, a prestigious but dangerous position. When the city's governor turned hostile, David fled with his family, first to Iran and then to India. He arrived in Bombay with invaluable Middle Eastern networks and a deep understanding of politics. And most importantly, he aligned himself fully with British imperial interests. They saw him as loyal, useful, and, unlike large Indian communities, no threat to their power. That usefulness is what opened the door to the Chinese market. Why opium took over China? Quick recap. Britain wanted Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain. China didn't want British goods, so China demanded payment only in silver. Britain's silver reserves began to collapse. The British solution? Flood China with Indian opium, knowing addiction would force Chinese buyers to pay in silver. In 1836 alone, the Sassoons shipped 30,000 chests of opium, each weighing about 120 pounds, into Chinese ports. Addiction spread throughout coastal China, destroying families, crippling cities, and pushing the Qing Empire toward collapse. But for the Sassoons, this was the beginning of their golden age. Prestige built on poppies, with enormous profits flowing in, the Sassoons rose to legendary status. In Bombay, they were celebrated benefactors. People saw their hospitals and libraries, not their opium ships. The British welcomed them into exclusive circles. David Sassoon received British citizenship, a rare honor for a non-European. His son, Reuben, became a close friend of the future King Edward VII. And soon, the Sassoons were intermarrying with none other than the Rothschilds. Their fortunes and the empire's ambitions were now intertwined. A crest of poppies and a family identity crisis, the Sassoons proudly embraced symbols of their trade. Albert Sassoon even commissioned a family crest featuring the poppy, the flower from which opium comes. But as generations passed, many descendants grew embarrassed by their origins. Some mocked the source of their wealth as dirty Eastern money. The family that once celebrated its rise from the East now struggled with its own identity, trapped between their Jewish-Arab roots, Indian legacy, and British aspirations. The beginning of the end after the Opium Wars, China was forced open even further, and the Sassoons' trade surged to nearly 59,000 chests. But internal fractures soon began to tear the dynasty apart. A bitter family feud split the empire into two rival companies, David Sassoon and Co., E.D. Sassoon and Co. Both fought each other in the very business that built their fortune, weakening the family's dominance. Later generations lost interest entirely. Some heirs cared more about luxury estates in England than running global operations. By the 1930s, the original firm had collapsed so badly that British authorities declared some partners unfit to serve. Meanwhile, the breakaway company led by Victor Sassoon tried to rebuild by moving operations to Shanghai. For a moment, it worked. Victor became Shanghai's biggest real estate tycoon, and his community sheltered over 20,000 Jewish refugees fleeing the Nazis. But China's communist revolution would ultimately seize everything, wiping out the last great branch of the Sassoon financial empire. What remains of the Sassoons today? The dynasty faded, but their fortunes didn't vanish. They simply scattered, hidden behind trusts, investments, and new names. Their legacy lives on in two forms. 1. Their philanthropy, still visible across Mumbai. 2. Their role in one of history's most destructive narcotics trades. The Sassoons rose from refugee exiles to imperial power brokers, shaping cities, influencing empires, and profiting from addiction on a massive scale, before collapsing under their own ambitions and divisions. If you reached this far, drop a flower emoji in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and scan the QR code or check the description for early access to videos through my newsletter. And if you're interested in the Rothschilds, the video is linked right here.